Okay.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Yvette Owens, Yvette C. Owens here with my friend Chiara White-Mink. Um, she's actually my goddaughter. I will disclose
Oh,
that. um, so she's more than my friend, but she's my goddaughter as well. And we've been in conversations over the last few months and talking about different experiences. And so this morning we wanted to talk about being committed to our best selves. So while you're joining, and I'm going to make sure I have a good link on Facebook doing this. So I have, let me turn that down so we don't get any feedback so I can watch what's happening there. And I will share as well. So if you're watching, if you're tuning in, if you would share as well, that would be awesome because I think that many people um, are trying to be their best selves, especially in this crazy world that we're living in,
yeah.
trying to find their footing, trying to find their um, keeping their mind and their sanity without losing it and all the craziness that's going on. So some of you might be wondering, how did we get here? A few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I felt actually I was awakened in the middle of the night with around this concept of being committed. I believe it came out of a struggle that I was having where I felt that individuals, different individuals and things, might sometimes want us to be committed to them. And there is some validity in being committed to the people around you. There is also um, a greater calling that each of us have. I believe that we should be committed to who created us. um, and I believe that in myself is the triune God, Christ Jesus, and Holy Spirit, and being committed to Him. And so I started this journey. And if you're following me on my page, if you're not, hey, send me a friend request. I'm happy to accept it. And you'll start to see posts around committed compilations where I'm actually talking about what it really means to be committed, really committed, really authentically aligned with and following someone or being supportive of someone, um, making sure that their well-being is cared for and so forth. So that's what we're talking about, committed. But today I've invited Kiara to come and share around what it really means to be committed to ourselves, because she's gone through so many different experiences, but even more recently, a more recent experience that was very intimate to her that caused her to do some reflections on what it really means to be committed to you. And so I want to encourage everybody to do that. And that's not mean being selfish or having this entitlement. So anybody who's thinking, oh, I know what this is going to and where it's going, absolutely not. Stick with us, stay with us, share, like. If you're on YouTube, thank you for joining. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. And so at this time, I'm going to introduce Kiara White-Mink, global educator. I'm so proud of her, so excited for all of her experiences, and ask her to share more about herself.
Well, thank you for the invite. I'm definitely excited to share this space with you all. So, as my godmother said, I am Kiara White Mink. I teach ninth and 10th grade English at Loomis Chafee School. And prior to teaching at Loomis Chafee, I've had experiences teaching in Sierra Leone, which is a tiny country in West Africa, wedged between Liberia and Guinea. And I've also had the experience of teaching in Namibia, which is in Southern Africa, at a bridging school. So I actually taught students in one class from ages 5 to 18. So that was a really fascinating experience for me. Love being in the field of education. Like, this is absolutely my calling. And I sort of got into this field by reflecting pretty critically and intensely on my secondary educational experiences, and thinking about what I wanted for myself, thinking about what I saw youth like me experiencing, and what they wanted, and trying to uh, deliver that for them, right? Trying to sort of live out the philosophy that education can and should be the practice of freedom, which is a Freudian notion. So that's my life. That's my life's work. That's what I'm committed to in my educational career. What else can I say about myself? I don't know. Something a little lighthearted. I'm a Capricorn. Birthday's next month in January. I enjoy reading. I enjoy writing, which is not uh, foreign to being an English teacher, but I really see it as a way to just sort of think and interpret and process the world around me. Right, we all have to have that mechanism to engage with our world in really productive ways. So I hope that's
Awesome.
enough.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure we're going to learn more about you as we continue in this interview and this conversation. So, again, I'm not sure what Committed Compilations is yet. I'm not even sure what it's going to become, but I'm just going with the flow as I'm getting things and I periodically get them. And sometimes they're flowing right away, coming to me rapidly. Sometimes there's a little stretch in between. So, again, I invite you to send me a friend request on Facebook. That's right now where I'm sharing them on my personal page because, again, I don't know what this is. I don't. But I'm open to growing through this experience. Hey, what about this? I'm committed to growing through this
There we
experience
go.
to see what it does become. So I know some people have sent me some, hey, what do you want a logo? And I'm not ready for the logo. I'm not ready for even branding because I'm trying to figure out what this is. But I
Yeah, no,
do
for
know
sure.
what this conversation is about, and it's about being committed to self. And so I want to just jump in. If you have some questions, if you're on watching, thank you for watching. Please share it with others so other people can chime into the conversation. If you're watching, I'm watching for your comments on Facebook as well as on within the chat. So do that. So we're going to jump in with some of the questions. So Chiara,
Yes.
Miss Educator, if you say you're committed, and before I do that, I do want to apologize. I'm fighting a cold, so if you see me clearing or wiping my nose or my eyes, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to keep it fresh. Just wanted to share that. I wanted to be upfront with that. All right. If you say you're committed, what exactly are you committed to? And please be specific.
Sure. So can I start with sharing the experiences that led me to this place?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I joined Peace Corps in 2018. And so I flew to Sierra Leone, West Africa, and I had an assignment there for 2 years where I was going to teach in a large village and then sort of implement whatever projects that the community needed, right? So it was consulting the community, seeing what their glaring issues were, and then sort of creating projects that address those issues. So while I was there, I met this guy, and he and I hit it off relatively quickly, and then we ended up getting married. And it was a long distance relationship, right? I was flying back and forth to Sierra Leone. I mean, we had plans to be together eventually, but until that day happened, like I had to sort of sacrifice quite a bit. But the more that I stayed in that relationship, the more that I learned about the person that I was with. And then I kind of figured out that I was in a relationship with like a full blown narcissist because I like knew there were things that were weird and strange, and I questioned them with friends. I questioned them with family, but I continued anyway until like enough was enough. And so in that experience, I saw that I was uh, not engaging with myself in the ways that I am accustomed to engaging with myself. And that was deeply problematic and troublesome for me. So I can say that I am right now in an intense period of evaluation and reevaluation. So, one of the first things that I've learned about this situation really is to just make sure that you are holding on tight to your sense of reality. and not allowing people to disrupt that relationship with your reality, your memories, your stories, your experiences. Um, so I've learned that gaslighting, which is what that is, right? When a person tries to disrupt your reality, like, is a glaring indicator of emotional abuse, probably like the number one indicator of emotional abuse. So we have to sort of retrain ourselves uh, to trust in our experiences, right? If something is making us uncomfortable, if something is making us sad or angry, we have to lean into that. I think we often try to uh, rationalize, or contextualize situations, and sometimes to our own detriment.
Mm-hmm.
I saw myself doing that a lot. Like, oh, I'm experiencing this because of the lack of educational experiences this person had, or maybe I am being too sensitive. I always grew up with people telling me I was too sensitive, or maybe I don't understand something. No, our bodies and our brains serve us well. If
Mm-hmm.
our bodies are telling us something, if our brains are telling us something, we have to learn to lean in to our responses to the world. So I think the number one thing, like being committed to myself, is really honoring my responses to other people, to my environment, and sitting with that and sort of unpacking why it is I'm having these relationships with the people or environment around me.
I think that you bring out a major point. We sometimes, and there's a delicate balance in listening to the advice and what people are sharing with us, especially, we're people have been to places and been in experiences that we haven't been in, but at the end of the day, we have to be true to ourselves and how does it feel for us and what is that experience for us,
Yeah,
and interpret it in our own way. And so again, sometimes when we're not doing that, people tag you as being disrespectful. You're just not listening to me. You're doing your own thing anyway. You wouldn't be there if here if you had to listen to me and done it my way. Well, guess what? My way, your way might not be my way. More than likely, it's not. We all have our own way to live out, and it's like, can we just support each other as we go along that journey,
yeah,
that individual journey? Again, dropping those seeds, dropping those nuggets of information and insight that we've learned as going along the way, but giving people room and space to be able to grow and carve out and make their own path. So I appreciate the fact that yeah, you were listening and you balanced people saying, okay, you can be sensitive, okay, you can be this, you can be that, but then you realize, wait a minute, maybe I can, but in this scenario, this is taking a different route. So, how do you respond to that?
yeah. It's interesting because, and I was just, it's so interesting because after this experience, so I think I'm comfortable to an extent working through my emotions, but I also tend to intellectualize things quite a bit.
Hmm.
So I also found myself doing a lot of research about what I experienced. And something that I learned is when people are not for you, we know that within like the first month
Hmm.
of interacting with them. There are always, 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 red flags. But again, like, we start to rationalize those things. And that prevents us from, doing what we know we should do. I know I did that, quite a bit, especially because um, Sierra Leone is a deeply impoverished country. Like, if we look at the Human Development Index, they fall within the bottom eight on that. So they're one of the poorest countries in the world. And also, like, there's this World Happiness Report that gets published every year. They tend to be, in the bottom on that report too. So I just that constantly found myself saying, okay, Kiara, you can't, how can you have these expectations when he's engaged with the world in a very different way than you
Hmm.
have engaged with the world? But something that I learned also in that situation is that love. And this is not even just about like romantic relationships, right? This
Right.
is applicable to platonic relationships as well.
Right.
But a relationship should never require, ever, ever require a severance with self.
Right.
Sacrifices, maybe, depending on the relationship, but severance with self, never. Nobody who loves me will ever ask me, to not be myself, to not love myself, to not celebrate and honor myself, to not be committed to, growth and, critical introspection and all of these sort of complex mental and emotional processes that, help us grow and, uh, engage with the world in really healthy ways. And I found that in order to be with that person, that was kind of the prerequisite. That's what I had to sort of do to make the relationship functional. And you
Yeah.
have to be willing to say no to that.
Yeah, and so you're talking about we shouldn't be settling. I love what you say. We should never, no relationship, no relationship, romantic, platonic, and I talk about business culture and company culture and corporate culture all the time. No relationship should have you sever yourself from self, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not in an environment that's healthy, that's allowing you to thrive as you're going along a journey with other people to fulfill a vision or to do a joint vision, you lose yourself, or you're required to sacrifice your entire being, something's wrong with that. And
Yeah.
so something's very, very wrong with that. And you need to I love the fact that you did research. And I think sometimes we're too lazy. Let's just tell the truth and shame the devil. Sometimes we're just too lazy to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? We're all in our feelings, we're all in our emotions, and emotions takes tremendous energy.
Yeah.
But if we don't step back and do the work to come out of, step above that, rise above those emotions, do the research, do the analysis, evaluations, and it doesn't have to be deep. Just step above your emotions and see, what is this really going on here? And is
Yeah.
this a healthy place for me? So I want to ask you the next question. What specific results and outcomes are you committed to, especially when we talk about being committed to ourselves?
Hmm. Um, so I think this commitment to self thing, right? Because it can sometimes feel like a sort of sexy topic, something that's hot in the moment, right? You remember when self care just became, and it still is, right? Really, really popular. Um, and like it became popular without much depth.
Hmm.
Um, being committed to yourself is the journey is not, uh, it's not a simple journey. Uh, it's a scary journey. It is a messy journey. Um, it takes time to sort of sort through, all of the different facets of that journey. Um, and so I think one thing that I am, or one result I'm committed to is sort of constantly examining like the stories that I tell myself in order to get through the day. So we all have these narratives, and it feels implicit at times because we do it so naturally and so organically that we don't even know we're doing it. So I always ask myself, what sort of stories are getting me through my day, and are these stories like, you know, um, are they helping me sort of become the best version of myself, or are they helping me sort of hide a truth about myself, or do they skew the truth, or do they help to sort of maintain a facade? And that's difficult.
Mm,
Because sometimes you have to say, I have to say, okay, Kiara, like you're doing X, Y, and Z because it's helping you, appear to the world in a certain way because you're not ready to be, publicly vulnerable,
hmm.
or you're not ready to admit that you have this issue or you're struggling with X, Y, and Z. And it not only examining those stories but telling yourself the truth is critical. You cannot move into a better version of yourself without sort of really unpacking how you view yourself and how you relate to others and how you relate to different environments. Like it's hard, um, but you have to do it.
Yeah, and I've recent this week I've been doing broadcasts and posts around listening, and what you bring up is, am I listening to myself? Listening means receiving, understanding, evaluating, and responding.
Yes.
And we don't listen to each other enough, and we
Yeah.
certainly don't listen to ourselves. And to your point, those narratives that we're talking, you were actually listening to what you're saying, and where was that coming from? From what perspective is it coming from? What intent was it coming from? So that in itself is being committed to yourself. To I'm going to be very attentive to me,
Yeah.
because I'm the only one that gets the insight knowledge, and to be able to hear everything that's going on with me. Nobody else can be in my head, nobody else is in my heart, nobody else is in my emotions. And so if I don't listen to me, if I'm not attentive to me, then it can get skewed, it can get out of whack, and I can go off, and then my responses to other people are off, or whatever. So I have to really be in tune with what's happening with me. And so when we talk about being committed to self, let's start there. Start there with listening to yourself. And to your point, it is scary, it is messy. um some people, either they're going to have the patience as you go through the process, or not. And okay, I'll see you either on the other side of this or not. But be willing to that's the kind of sacrifices that you're talking about, that we have to make. Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah. And it's just and yeah, a lot of people are scared of that work, and they're scared of themselves. Um, and posturing is a lot easier than that critical, deep, uh, introspective work that will bring you to that other side. Like it's especially in the era of social media. Um, we don't really see sort of people, talking about like the nitty gritty or the hard work. Like we see the good sides of people a lot on social
Mhm.
media. So it's kind of hard to uh, share that raw truth, um, when everywhere you look, right, you just see posturing, posturing, posturing. Um, and so it does take some courage to do that.
So you've talked about part of your process. Can you lay out any other parts of the process when you're being committed to yourself, specifically? You've talked about doing research, you've talked about evaluating, you talked about listening to your own narratives. Are there other things that you've done um, within that process? If you would talk to us about that.
Yeah. So something that I think is also uh, just hard, especially within the Black community, is just talking to a therapist. I and so I'm a deeply proactive person. So when I uh, came back from the States, so I was in Sierra Leone this summer, um, and then that's when everything hit the fan. And so I was, sort of making different plans for how I was going to start my healing journey when I got back. And I realized that you have to have somebody look under your hood,
Mhm.
um, someone who can ask the right questions, someone that you can be vulnerable with. Because, like I said, like we're scared of ourselves. We're sometimes
Mhm.
scared to engage with past experiences, and so having sort of a third party, come in and help you manage and work through those experiences, is helpful. And in those sessions, and this is important because I'm a really reflective person. I would say that, and I spend a lot of time asking myself really hard questions and trying to be
Mhm.
really honest and raw in my responses. But it's different, right, when you ask yourself questions, because sometimes you're a little kinder to yourself, when you're with a therapist. Like they're gonna do the work that they feel that you need to
Mhm.
grow, and to thrive, right? Because as Dr. Maya Angelou says, like thriving is elegant, and that's what I strive for. And so, really, in those sessions, I spent a lot of time examining my origin stories, because when you sort of unpack, past experiences, it helps you understand, why you show up in your relationships the way that you do. So, because I didn't understand, you know, why I, stayed in that situation for as long as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I started, you know thinking about, past people I dated, or like, things that happened in school, or like, you know family stuff, like whatever, I started to piece together like why I was showing up this way. And so, like I said, hard work, but you cannot move forward and relate to others in healthy ways if you don't take, not if you're afraid, sorry, if you don't take the time to like examine, how did I get the way that I am, like what factors, what experiences, what stories, what people, shaped me into the person that I am today. um,
Awesome. So if you're joining us, thank you for joining. Please share this. We are talking this morning with Chiara White-Mink, who is a global educator. She has served time and taught students across in various countries of Africa, and she's been here teaching in America. And so we're sharing now around how to be your best self. She just came out of a really I don't know, would you say tumultuous relationship, or
yeah.
a personal relationship? And so she's learned a lot. She's sharing her process in how she's being committed to herself and what she's learned from that, and how we can be committed to ourselves, being honest with ourselves in the process. So far she's shared with us, she's, being very reflective, done research, being open to talking to a therapist, being open to even listening to herself, her internal talk, her own narratives, and what is that, how is that shaping her responses to the world around her. And so we're so happy to be here with her. Just share again, and let others know, because I know, I'm not even going to say I think, I know many of us need this conversation. So, Chiara, what's the new standard you're setting for yourself? You've gone through this experience. Again, you've seen a repetitive thing happening in some relationships. How are you going to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, whew, that's an excellent question. So I'm just learning to effectively gatekeep. Um,
Mm,
like we have to love ourselves to the extent that we say no, no more letting any and everybody in my space. Uh,
mm,
that man should have never been in my space ever. And so we have to sort of think, go back to the drawing board, think about the boundaries that we need to erect so that we don't allow these things to happen again. So one thing I've learned is we have to not only set boundaries, because I think a lot of us do set boundaries, but the problem is when we don't adhere to them. Like if
mm,
I say, for example, infidelity is a non-negotiable in my relationship. Non-negotiable. That means if it happens, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm moving on. Exiting stage left, because like I don't need to deal with that, and I
right.
can have enough confidence to say I don't need to deal with that. Um, and so when it happens and you stay, then you start to lose credibility, because like, okay, like if I beg enough, if I cry, she'll feel empathetic and stay with me. So we gotta adhere to those boundaries. Another thing, we gotta stop with the third chances. When people show you who they are the first time,
First time.
you gotta believe them. Um, and we gotta stop trivializing things. Like if the first thing you do when you meet me is lie, like that's kind of a huge red flag. I've had a number of like men lie to me about their age, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can be honest and say I still proceeded when I really should not have. What, you lied to me about your age? Something kind of trivial? Because one, if you're lying to me about your age, like you're thinking in your head, okay, like this is something that might potentially be an issue. So you're not even giving me a fair opportunity to, you know, think about whether or not I want to be in this relationship. Like I don't even get that choice. You robbed me
Mm,
of that choice. Uh,
mm.
so when let's stop trivializing the red flags, right? They're important. They start to become more visible and frequent the longer you stay in the relationship. Save yourself some time, save yourself some heartbreak, because the longer you stay in a situation, um, the more difficult it's going to be to leave. So we got to cut our losses early. um, cut them early. um,
And I want to just jump in for a second because you talk about having those boundaries. Let's be really practical about what that looks like, right? So I know you and I've been talking and going back and forth, and I'm not looking to expose everything, but we've come up with lists,
yeah.
about, okay, if you really know that you're called to have a mate in your life and you want a mate in your life, then what are the parameters for that relationship? And it should be written down, and it should be
Yeah.
as specific as possible, because when we're in the moment, when we're having been introduced to someone, and all the craziness goes on, the butterflies, oh, he's the fragrance of his cologne, all the look of his abs and all that kind of stuff going on. That's not a time to come up with the list.
Yeah.
That's a time to be able to say, okay, I know I'm in this emotional thing, but where's my list? And kind of start to pull those items on the list. And if it's not on the list, if something's not on a list, that's a
Part.
boundary, and walk away. It's like, okay, you're a really great friend, maybe, or you're a really great person, but you're not my person, because I've sat down, I've really talked, I really thought through this list. And if you are a believer, you've presented that list to God, and He has validated that list to you, or He worked with you with that list. So I think when we talk about having boundaries, be very specific. Stop playing. Come
Yeah.
on, stop playing.
Stop playing
Saying you
with yourself.
stop playing with yourself, saying you got I got boundaries, but you have no idea what boundary number 1 through 5 are.
Yeah.
Write those down so you can refer back to them, even if you have to step out of that moment and then go look at it as soon as you get home, or it's on your phone or whatever. Be able to reflect to it, because you will be tormented. I was sharing with Chiara, I was tormented by someone that I kept seeing, and it was like, why am I being tormented? And it's like, and it wasn't until it was like, well, does he have what's on your list? And then when I realized no, then it's like, just forget it then. And I'm like, ooh, I had so much freedom. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, we got to be very practical in what those boundaries are, and stop
Yeah.
playing. Stop playing.
Yeah. There was something you said. I'm trying to remember. Oh, this this what hurts my heart is that I often find Black women in particular uh, settling, and thinking that there isn't better out there, um, and that this is the best it's going to get, so they stay. I know I didn't experience that with my partner, because I know there was better out there. um, yeah. Just way better out there. But it was just I experienced a lot of fear and chronic self doubt. I was just like, okay, when I leave this relationship, now what? I listen to stories from friends. I watch social media. All of these different spaces communicate to us that Black women, we can't have it all. Like it almost feels like a ubiquitous cultural message.
Mm.
um, and that's something that I've struggled with a lot, that I've had to unlearn, um, that we can have it all, we deserve to have it all. Sometimes it requires a bit of patience, though, and a little bit of trial and error. But if we say that we are committed to the best versions of ourselves, if we desire partnership, that means finding a partner who is in alignment with what it means
Yes.
to be, you know, the best version of yourself. Like I remember I was having a conversation with one of my friends, one of my good friends that I met in the Peace Corps. And I was just like, imagine two people, who are both committed to the best versions of themselves. Because dating, dating is not like, sorry, there's several thoughts that are in my head right now. Like, one, we have to have a clear purpose for dating. Like, we can't date because we're lonely. We can't date
Right.
because we're bored. And to be frank, like, those are some of the reasons that I've gotten into these really problematic relationships. I was bored, right? I was
Mhm.
lonely. I was like, oh, some companionship would be nice. No, we have to have a clear and explicit purpose, to dating. It's not a place for, injured souls to find healing. It's not a place to remedy disappointment or pain. You have to be a whole person. um, and when you're a whole person, you can be in a relationship with another whole person. And then just imagine what the world would be like when you have two whole healthy people coming together, right?
Mm,
You're going to rock this world.
absolutely.
And that's what I desire. I know what I bring to the table. I know, that I am committed to, asking myself the hard questions, having other people ask me the hard questions, and working through things. And I want a partner who cares about the same things. Um, and when
Yeah.
we can, do damage when you. But I find that a lot of people lack that vision.
Mhm. Because
Um,
you're to your point, you think we have to settle, or we take on the next project. Your mate should not be your project.
yes,
Your mate should not be someone that you're going to fix. To your point, it's the person who's coming whole, and you're coming together. You're coming to that relationship as whole as we can be at any given time, right? Because it's an evolution, right? But when we're coming to that relationship whole, as the best, as our best selves, then we can do, to what you said earlier, rock the world, and we continue to grow together to do that. But when I'm coming and I gotta now fix you, or give you time to get fixed or get right, and then, or you feel like you need to fix me, we're wasting time. We're wasting time, and we're not fulfilling our purpose. So I want to just say to our ladies, stop taking on people who you say who really are your projects, as opposed to a part of your purpose. Stop it.
yeah,
Because they are, and it doesn't mean that they're not good people or won't potentially become good people, but that might not be your assignment. And so we have to stop going into relationships thinking that the person we're now with is our next assignment. Come on now.
yeah.
We're being brought together to really rock the world, to achieve the world, to make a real impact for generations to come if we end up united in marriage. And we should not be doing that, having to fix someone along the way.
Yeah. Can I share something?
Sure.
Um, so for example, like I have a master's degree, and I love reading. And something that I hope will happen when I like find whoever it is I'm supposed to be with is that we'll read together and discuss literature together. The list that I wrote about what I seek in a partner, my like ex-husband doesn't have. He's everything, anything on that list. He doesn't meet any of the requirements, like
Mm,
any of them. That's
wow.
scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never, ever, ever dated a man who has a master's degree, not even a bachelor's degree, I don't think.
Right.
And I'm not, trying to sound elitist or anything like that, but I just think that that's like a woman with a master's degree who has never dated someone who is her equal or even close. Like, that's disappointing and it's upsetting and it's scary.
Yeah.
And we're allowed to have standards for ourselves.
And like you said, you saw the red flags early on. You saw
Yeah.
those red flags early on,
Yeah.
and we don't necessarily go into those relationships with those lists, but you are ready now. You are
Yeah, for
ready
sure.
now.
For sure. And something else you said about being a fixer, that goes back to like one of my previous points about examining your origin story. How did you get this way? Like
Mhm.
why do we routinely, because chances are if we're showing up in our relationship as a fixer or rescuer, that was certainly my position in my relationship with my ex. um like there's something that sort of influenced that. There's
Right.
something that sort of like made you take on that role, and it's likely that you've been in that role in other relationships in your
Mhm.
life too. So
Mhm.
you gotta examine like your origin story, where that comes from.
Or if or you're not, so for me, it was not under being very clear on my identity, my self-worth, my value that I was bringing. You're saying, you said already, you know what you bring to the table. Even though we know who we are, we don't know that it's okay to still have those requirements coming into a relationship. So I might be able to stand in my workplace very strong and say, look, I know my value, I know my worth, and I'm not going to allow people to treat me X way. But then we come into a heart situation, a heart relationship, and now i'm I'm allowing my I'm not coming in with my clear identity and requiring that relationship to serve that identity, as opposed, so I'm coming in, okay, my identity and part of who I am is I do fix things, I do help people achieve, but I'm not supposed to do that everywhere in my life, and
uh,
especially in my intimate relationship with my ultimate life mate. That
yeah.
should be a partnership where we're building not only each other up, but our family, the generations to come, the world around us, but um not fixing that person till they get to that place because I'm not worthy. This is the best I can get. Because honestly, I didn't date a lot coming up. So, when I had men talking to me or whatever, which wasn't often, let's just be real, I was like, oh, wow, let me just grab this, let me just respond. So I was listening, I understood, and I was evaluating from a very unhealthy place in that this doesn't happen often. So let me just figure out how I'm supposed to respond and grab onto this. And it cost me. It really did cost me. And so
Yeah.
we need to be very clear on who we are, what we bring to the table. And to your point, it's okay to require those same things, those same standards that you require for yourself from somebody else to respect those things in you. So
Yeah.
what are you willing to give up, sacrifice to meet your standards?
Ooh. So on this journey, you realize like who is working in service of your vision, and who, like, the people that are antagonistic, the people who are enemies of advancement and progress. So you have to be willing to let go people, I think, and relationships who, uh, the ones that are not reciprocal, right? Ones where you're giving, 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 right?
Mm,
But they're not benefiting you in any way, shape, or form. Like, I found myself giving and giving and giving to that man. I don't even call him by his name anymore. I have a few like uh names for him, but so we're just gonna call him that man. Um, I gave so much, and I had to evaluate, what am I getting in return? Heartache,
mhm.
like aggravation, being gaslighted,
Yeah.
like all of these negative sort of things I was receiving in return for all my good work. And I'm not saying I don't go, okay, like I don't go into relationships like explicitly saying, this is what I need from you. But, I think that's all part of like, you know, boundaries and communication. Maybe we should start being explicit about how we expect to be treated. Not maybe, we should be explicit about how we expect to be treated by others.
Right.
Um,
Right. And maybe you don't lead with that, right? But you
yeah,
are very, very conscious of it. And, when you're in those initial conversations and they're saying, tell me about me, tell me about you, be transparent. This is who
yeah,
I am and this is what I require for me. So,
yeah,
you're not making it an issue for anyone else, but this is what I require for me to be able to continue on my journey successfully, and they'll either comply or not. And sometimes we're too adverse to rejection,
Yeah.
or not being willing to adhere to or even engage in other people's objection to what we might be saying.
Yeah.
And so we go with, let me say, what's pleasing to the other ear. No, what's pleasing to your inner ear first,
Yeah.
right?
And I think it's also important to pay attention to how people respond when you set a boundary. That's something that I've, been extremely like attentive to. Like I remember I was talking to this guy and I like had set a boundary and he was challenging that boundary and pretty intensely as well. And I just was like, nope, can't do this. Like if you healthy people, when you set a boundary, are going to probably be apologetic for violating that boundary, even if it wasn't unintentional. Like again, there's a learning curve when you first meet people. You kind of have to be graceful because they don't know you yet, so they don't know how to like respond to you. But when you do say, hey, I don't like when you do X, Y, and Z, or I don't like when this happens, and they're apologetic and they commit to not doing it again and they don't do it again, then that's healthy.
Right.
But when you set a boundary and someone challenges that boundary, or they sort of like, I don't know, like do lip service, say that they understand the boundary, but then keep violating it, it's time for you to exit stage left. Like, right, because we can't keep giving the second chances. I've told you how I want to be treated. You keep, treating me in a way that I don't like or deserve, quite frankly. So we have to be willing to leave when people aren't, treating us the way we want to be treated.
And I want to say that that translates into every place where we're expending our energy.
Yeah.
So for me right now, it's happening in a place, and it's like you're in there, you're working alongside with people, you're trying to help, you're doing your part to help grow that place, to get it to a better place. And not that you're the only answer, but when people are so satisfied being where they are, and to your point, you see they might say they want better, but their actions and behaviors show we're reinforcing right where we are, then that's very telling. And you need to be able to empower yourself to respond to that.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly, I think I haven't really responded to that in a healthy way, totally, because I've gotten angry. I've come kind of like pulled away. Um, but it was all in my process of figuring out how do I, because I believe I'm supposed to still kind of be in this space. And so why am I in this space? And let me really narrow and tune into my purpose for being in that space, so I exert my energy in that direction and not look in the other areas where I see we can do a lot better and
Yeah.
we can have improvement. And even though we talk about wanting to do it, and but we're not dealing with the reality. And I had to say that to somebody last week. It's like, she was like, "Oh, well, this is great." I said, "No, it's not great, because we things should have been prepared. Everybody should have been prepared, but they weren't. So it's
Yeah.
not great. So let's stop, putting those falsities out there. It's not great." But
Yeah.
then I'm going through a process of, how do I really internally come back to a healthy place within me to be in this space, to get out what I need to get out and to contribute what I need to contribute. And so again, it's being very committed to that journey of a process that you outlined for us, doing research, getting into a niche. Everything that you are involved in is not for you to fix, and
No.
it's okay even if they ask you. And if they ask you to fix it and you're trying to fix it and they're not responding and they're still accepting the same old, you have the right of refusal to back up out of that stuff and figure out why you are there.
Yeah, that in this, I just had like a random thought though that I think is important. The things that like that we've learned have often happened in our adult years. And I just think about children and, and they are vulnerable to these types of experiences and situations and people. And I just really wish that students were able to take a course on like human behavior. So they
Mm,
had sort of like a not a comprehensive, because I don't think it could even be comprehensive with all that we see, but just so they can have sort of like a toolbox for like what to do to, avoid these types of situations. Um, it just it makes me sad. Like I feel like there just needs to be some sort of educational initiative. Like people need to be able to learn about these patterns because they cause a lot of pain and they cause a lot of heartache. And some of the consequences and ramifications are like chronic, self doubt or second
right,
guessing. That's definitely something that I've experienced. Um, just a shattered, sense of self esteem and self worth, like, and just all of these other things, right? We sometimes we store trauma in our bodies so we can have
right.
physiological, responses to, emotionally unhealthy relationships. So it kind of scares me. Like I hope to have children one day, but I'm just like, man, there's a lot to protect them from.
Absolutely.
But I think there's this quote by, I think it's Frederick Douglass, who talks about like it's easier to build like strong children than repair broken men.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this starts when we're young, um, having these conversations, like even getting our children, talking to mental health professionals about the things that they experience, and acknowledging certain things as normal, but also acknowledging that things are abnormal. That's another thing.
Right,
You have to have a critical community of friends, or not even just friends, like a critical community. Let's just say that, a critical community, because I needed people to tell me, Chiara, this isn't normal. That's not
right,
normal. That's not how people are supposed to treat you.
right,
Um, because sometimes we gotta have, when we have outsiders who can sort of see the things that we don't see, it's really really helpful. I know that was one of the major things that helped me. I have a community of people that love me deeply and intensely, um, and they just helped me really see my my self-worth and my value, and say, girl, this is what we're seeing. And I know that you perhaps can't see it because you're in it, right? When you're in the thick of things, it's hard for you to see it. But it was just scary how, when I talk to different people, just the patterns.
yeah. So we're rounding up, we're coming to the top of the hour,
Are
and
we?
yeah, see, that went by fast, right? I
Yeah.
want to just piggyback on that comment because it does, we talk about it does take a community, and that community can't be dictatorial. They have
No.
to give you the space to um, work through it, come to the realization, but at least be able to engage you in those conversations and be there when you were ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
Not try to impose you should be talking about it. Because again, nobody's closest to it than you are. So even with what you were sharing, we could only know based on what you were sharing. You were living it. And so we had to make sure we were there supportive of the conversation, sharing our insights, and allowing you to walk through it and being there for you doing that walk.
That's, and speaking to my family and friends, that I think was really hard for them to like witness. I remember, I struggled with some sort of conflicting emotions afterward, because I was just like, why didn't anyone just say anything to me?
Right.
And then it's a delicate dance, because you don't. I remember one of my friends told me, she said, I didn't want you to stop telling me things.
Right.
And I did find myself doing that when I was annoyed with like the responses that I got from
Hmm.
people. I kind of, kept bits and pieces of information from other people. And then when I look back, it was information that was problematic that I was keeping, because I knew if I said something to someone, they would be like, "What are you doing, girl? What are you doing? Get out of this space." Um, but yeah, I love that my community, just allowed me to uh like work through this on my own before I kind of like reached out to people, or to them rather. And they welcomed me with non-judgmental arms,
Mm.
because they knew they knew that I shouldn't have been with this person, especially my dad. Like they knew.
Dads know. Dads know.
Yeah, and that's also the other thing. Like they didn't. I kind of bypassed the vetting phase
Mm,
because of the long distance element.
yeah,
So let your community of friends and loved ones vet your partners too, because they see things that we don't,
right.
and they'll ask questions that we won't, ask. So it's important to it's an all hands on deck kind of thing.
And you mentioned training for children. I think there needs to be training for communities of families and friends to be able to respond as yours did, right? Um, Not because sometimes they get in the way because they come trying to rescue, they come doing the swoop in and swoop out kind of thing. And let me just grab you up out of this thing. And that wouldn't have not, you would not have responded to that positively anyway.
Yeah.
So we have a few minutes left. Tell people where they can find you, what's next for you, um, how they can continue to keep track of, because I'm sure you were very transparent on your page about this whole relationship and some things that happen. I believe more is going to come out of this, not just for you, but you're doing it and you're sharing with others so they can learn from it too. So how can people, if you're willing to do that, how can they keep track of what you're doing and what you're sharing?
Yeah, I'm pretty active. I think, yeah, I'm pretty active on Facebook. That's probably like the number one place to find me. And I'm young, but I really don't use any other sort of social media platforms beside Facebook. So just my name. That's how you'll find me, just by plugging my name, Chiara White-Mink, into the search feature. I love to write. Like I said earlier, that's how I, understand the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm hoping to do some sort of writing projects. I don't know what that looks like yet. Um, but what I experienced was not normal by any means. Um, and I want to continue sharing that, with people in hopes that it'll help somebody like reevaluate their relationships, or even like reevaluate what their the types of treatment that they're allowing, or like, whatever emerges as a result of me sharing my experience. I just want people to just be on the lookout and be aware of these abnormalities in their like relationships, and respond, and not even just responding to those things if you're already in it, but preventing yourself from being in it,
Mm-hmm.
um, effectively gatekeeping, erecting those boundaries and adhering to them. Um, because if you can help it, you just want to be so in tune with yourself. You just want to be so in love with yourself that you are very critical about who you allow into your space. Like we have to be so in love with ourselves that we won't allow anyone to sort of disrupt that relationship that we have with ourselves.
I love that. Be in love with yourself. And sometimes we think we're not supposed to do that. If I don't love myself first, who's going to love me afterwards, right? Or how will they know to love me? They might love me, but they'll love me according to their standards and their way, and not love me for who I am and what I require as someone loving me. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you for joining me today. I'm
Thanks for the
sure we're going
invite.
to follow up on this conversation, because just as you are allowing yourself to figure out what is next for you, I'm trying to figure out what's next for Committed Compilations. And so we'll figure out that together. We're all on our journeys together. And if this has resonated with you or someone that you shared, please let us know. We will be monitoring the comments after this broadcast. I know a lot of people are going to catch the replay. Make sure you share it if you're watching so that others can catch the replay. And we look forward to your comments. Thank you, Kiara. I love you, girl.
Love you too. Thanks for the invite. This was fun. This hour
Yeah,
just went by so quickly.
I know, right? Don't go anywhere. We'll chat after we get off the broadcast. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and remember, be committed to yourself, because if you're not committed to you, no one else will know how to respond to you in a healthy way. God bless. See you all later.
Bye.